Barcelona sees 12th straight night of protests over jailed rapper. Gunmen kill 11 in Mexico's Jalisco state. And Western Sahara's Polisario Front accuses the UN of supporting Morocco. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. In Catalonia, a police van was torched as looting broke out on Saturday amid clashes between protesters and law enforcement in Barcelona. The latest demonstration comes 11 days after the jailing of a Spanish rapper in a highly contentious free speech case. On February 16th, Pablo Hasél was jailed for 9 months over tweets in which he glorified terrorist attacks, likened former King Juan Carlos to a mafia boss, and accused police of killing demonstrators and migrants.
I'm here because of Pablo. I think that he as a person can be criticized. I'm not one to get into his words, but the reason they are condemning Pablo looks like an absence of freedom of expression to me. I'm here to defend him.
The fact that a politician is pro-Catalan independence doesn't mean that he is a criminal. We are talking about the same thing as Pablo's case. Freedom of speech. You can say they sidestep the law, and we can talk a lot about if they sidestep the law or didn't. But putting in jail some politicians because of their ideals seem to be much less than democracy.
Hundreds of people have gathered in Armenia's capital, Yerevan, to demand that the country's prime minister step down. The protesters, mostly opposition supporters, rallied near the National Assembly, demanding Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's resignation over his handling of last year's war with Azerbaijan. Pashinyan had indicated his willingness to meet with the opposition to defuse tensions, which started last week, but also threatened to arrest any opponents if they violate the law. Now, a protest against coronavirus restrictions turned violent in Ireland after riot police attempted to disperse the demonstrators. Thousands of people gathered in central Dublin to protest the country's coronavirus lockdown. However, Prime Minister Michael Martin has condemned the group, saying there can be no justification for the march or the violence that unfolded. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has shut down criticism leveled against her government over the recent death of a prominent journalist and activist while in police custody. Mushtaq Ahmed fell sick while in prison after getting arrested for allegedly spreading rumors and conducting anti-state activities. Since then, several Western countries have condemned the Bangladeshi government for his death. Protests over the journalist's arrest and subsequent passing have been ongoing since Friday, and several people have been injured and or detained during clashes with police.
Those who are criticizing, they would do so. You must have noticed who are the biggest critics. Do they understand the reality for once? They don't or are not doing it. No death is desired, nor it is desired that unrest will be created. Focus in it. What can be done if someone falls sick and dies?
Moving on, at least 25 protesters have been arrested in Myanmar's Yangon city during an anti-coup demonstration. Police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowd that gathered on the 4th week of daily protests against the military junta. The latest strike comes as the country's ambassador to the United Nations has made an appeal for action against the coup. The junta has justified its seizure of power by alleging widespread electoral fraud in the November polls. We do have more stories coming up. Don't go away.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con reportajes teleSUR.
Saturdays. Only on teleSUR.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays. Only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Gunmen in Nigeria have released 42 people, including 27 students who were kidnapped from a boarding school last week in the north-central state of Niger. The release comes just a day after a separate raid on a school in the Zamfara state saw gunmen abduct more than 300 girls. Kidnappings by armed groups are common across many northern Nigerian states. The recent attacks have also raised concerns about rising violence by armed gangs and Islamist insurgents. In fact, the jihadist group Boko Haram frequently carries out abductions in Nigeria's turbulent northeast.
They were rescued early this morning at about 4 a.m. in the morning, and I can confirm that all rescued victims from Kagara Science College are here, 38 in number, even though we have one still in the hospital suffering from excessive exhaustion. They are back here with us peacefully. They've been medically checked, and I believe the medical team will monitor them for a few more days, back soon with their families. This is a joint effort with our security agencies, our traditional rulers, and other major stakeholders.
And speaking during his weekly Sunday Mass address in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican, Pope Francis described the kidnapping of the schoolgirls as vile.
I join the bishops of Nigeria in condemning this vile abduction of 317 young girls taken away from their school in Janjebe, northwest of the country. We pray for these girls so they can be back home soon.
Moving on, an extremist insurgency has forced more than 670,000 people in northern Mozambique to flee their homes. But a critical shortage of food has driven some to risk returning to their old villages to resume farming. The internally displaced families living in makeshift camps in the Cabo Delgado province say the UN Refugee Agency has failed to provide them with sufficient food. The UN announced this week that 1.3 million people in Cabo Delgado and neighboring Niassa and Nampula provinces are in need of humanitarian aid, with 950,000 facing severe hunger.
The authorization to parcel the plots of land was given by the leader and the leader didn't talk with the local landowners to tell them that from now on they have to share the land with us displaced people. That's why we are having conflict between the locals and us.
What I find strange here is that when I go to farm, the local people say that this land doesn't belong to me. So I have to leave and ask those who created the conflict to provide land for farming. That's why I don't have farmland.
Meanwhile, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says his country's security forces are monitoring the developments in northern Mozambique to ensure there is no threat to surrounding nations, including his own. Attacks by an Islamic State-linked group in Mozambique have raised fears that the movement is seeking to establish itself in southern Africa. Ramaphosa adds that the Mozambican government regularly briefs the Southern African Development Community on the matter. Western Sahara's Polisario Front movement has accused the United Nations of not doing enough to stop Morocco's occupation of the North African country. The movement's Secretary General Katri Adou lamented that the UN has failed to reprimand the Moroccan government's recent decision to deploy troops to the disputed territory. Morocco has been in conflict with the Polisario Front over the Western Sahara since 1975, after the Spanish occupation ended. Rabat insists on its right to govern the region, having proposed autonomous rule under its sovereignty, while the Polisario Front wants a referendum to let the people determine the future of the region.
Morocco could not have done what it did without the support of the international community, the support of the UN, the Security Council, and the UN Secretary General. Morocco is, of course, responsible for its actions. It is the UN that bears great responsibility for Morocco's actions. The Sahrawis living in the occupied territories have been celebrating this anniversary for weeks to show the world that the Sahrawi people are united and agree on a single idea, which is combat and sacrifice.
I believe that the Sahrawi people return to the armed struggle with great hope of realizing their desire for freedom and independence. We also denounce what the United States, Morocco, and all nations that do not wish to see Sahrawi people free.
Shifting gears now, Tunisia's main parliamentary bloc, Ennahda, has rallied thousands of people in the capital, Tunis, in a show of support for Prime Minister Ikem Mechichi amid a dispute with President Kais Saied. In one of the biggest demonstrations the country has witnessed since the 2011 revolution, tens of thousands of party faithfuls marched through central Tunis, chanting, "The people want to protect institutions and the people want national unity." The dispute, triggered by Saied's rejection of Mechichi's plan to reshuffle the cabinet, has paralyzed government operations for weeks. Saied nominated Mechichi as prime minister last year, but the two men fell out shortly afterwards.
We have come today to save Tunisia. There are things that have gone a bit off course. We must save Tunisia and get back on the right path.
Our requests are for the powers, presidency, parliament, and government to meet and solve this problem. How long has it been without power? It is not normal.
There are people who call for disorder, and we don't like that. We want to build our country and leave something good to our children, and whether they can live there with everyone else, with however is praying or not. Everybody chooses how they want to live. We want to be all together, to build our country and leave something good for our children.
A civil coalition of Tunisian activists have called for the legalization of cannabis for medical and recreational purposes in the North African country. Now, the coalition said it was consulting with parliamentarians to develop a legal framework for the production and consumption of marijuana. Under the proposal, the state would reserve the sole right to produce and distribute cannabis. The coalition has argued that the move would provide huge financial returns given the high number of users who now buy it illegally.
We are a group of entities that militate for the cause of cannabis, and in particular, the legalization of cannabis. There are associations, personalities. We have worked on the issue from a specific point of view and from a social and societal angle. we ended up adopting the main idea of legalizing cannabis as a solution and remedy for drug use in Tunisia.
We're taking one last break, but we will be right back.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life. Fridays. Only on teleSUR. A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en él.
Dot in the I. Saturday, only on teleSUR. Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomism. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Trinidad and Tobago will soon receive its first batch of some 100,800 COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX facility.
The cost for this initial 100,000 plus 800 doses is US $504,000. So US $504,000, which includes the actual cost of the vaccine, which is roughly about $4 US, shipping, insurance, and all associated costs. But in the first instance, Trinidad and Tobago will not be paying $504,000. Why? Because CARFA has a grant, I believe, out of the European Union, where they can assist countries that fall under CARFA's remit, and Trinidad and Tobago will be receiving from CARFA US $160,838 towards the purchase of vaccines.
The first shipment of medical oxygen has arrived in Peru from Chile to help relieve a shortage for COVID-19 patients. According to health authorities, the demand for oxygen has increased by 200%, and this first batch will go to 6 hospitals in Lima and nearby cities. For the month of February, almost 200 COVID-19 patients have died every day in Peru, 4 times higher than in December, amid the second wave of the pandemic. According to official figures, almost 100,000 people have contracted COVID-19, 15,000 of which are hospitalized.
It had just crossed the border. It is now going to spend the night here in this post, the border complex of Santa Rosa. They are going to do all the necessary formalities, and tomorrow they will start their journey to Lima, which is their final destination. This is a purchase by the Peruvian state. It has bought 960 tons of oxygen, which will be arriving periodically, in principle every week. We don't know yet, at a rate of 40 tons at a time.
Shifting gears now, 11 people, including a minor, have been killed in Mexico's Jalisco state after unidentified gunmen riding in 2 pickup trucks opened fire on a street in a residential area. The state prosecutor's office said the bullet-riddled bodies of 10 men were found outside a home in Tonala, a municipality in the Guadalajara area, with another dead man discovered inside. Now, Jalisco, where a former governor was shot dead in December, is one of the epicenters of Mexico's drug-related warfare and home to the infamous Jalisco New Generation cartel. Over to the U.S., President Joe Biden says his administration will make an announcement regarding Saudi Arabia on Monday following the declassification of its intelligence report that implicated Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. This comes as the Biden administration faced criticism over its failure to take tougher measures against the Crown Prince, instead sanctioning average Saudi citizens. Khashoggi, a U.S. resident who wrote opinion columns for the Washington Post critical of the prince's policies, was killed and dismembered by a team of Saudi operatives in the kingdom's consulate in Istanbul in October 2018. Yemen's Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility for the attempted drone strike that targeted Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, on Saturday night.
The drone air forces and ballistic missile forces have carried out an important joint attack in the deep inland of Saudi Arabia. The operation was carried out with a ballistic missile type Zulfikar and 15 drones. Our operation will continue and will expand as long as the aggression and the siege on our country continues.
Meanwhile, fighting in Yemen's Marib province between government forces and Houthi fighters has killed around 50 combatants, including a special forces commander. Earlier this month, the Houthis resumed a push to capture Marib city, 120 kilometers east of the capital, Sana'a. Yemen has been embroiled in a bloody power struggle since 2014 between the government, supported by Saudi Arabia, and Houthi rebels who control Sana'a and most of the north. Staying in the region, Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein has visited Iran for the second time this month to discuss, among other issues, rising tensions in the region. Hussein met with his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif. Posting on his Twitter account after the meeting, Zarif said talks focused on expanding regional ties and international cooperation. They also agreed to reject the United States' aggression against Iraqi forces. And on that note, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I am Doris Polo. Thanks for watching.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomism,